My wife cheated 6 years ago, and I stayed for our family. Now, on the eve of our daughter's graduation, I finally decided to divorce, but she hates me for it. My wife and I have been married for 20 years, and we have a daughter who's 18. She graduated high school a few months ago. Around 6 years ago, I found out that my wife was cheating on me and having an affair which lasted for a couple of months. I really wanted to divorce, but my wife was really remorseful. She quit her job. She started going to therapy. She promised all reconciliation steps I asked for. Ultimately, I did decide to stay with my wife for her sake, and for our family's sake too. For around 5 years, everything was actually going great, and we had date nights, romantic vacations, and we really loved each other. However, on the 6th year, the whole thing resurfaced back on my mind, and I just couldn't get my mind off it. I finally made my decision after a particular line from my sister struck a chord with me. She said, "Would you really want to use the gift of life and spend it with someone who had betrayed you so badly?" She told me this a couple of days before my daughter's graduation, and that's when I finally decided I couldn't do it anymore. A day before my daughter's graduation, I informed my wife of my decision and told her that I would be filing for divorce soon. My wife was shocked, and she cried a lot and told me she would do anything, but I told her that my decision was final. My daughter's graduation in itself was great, and I was really proud of my daughter, and my wife seemed happy too, but my daughter could sense something was wrong and asked me why her mom seemed down and trying to fake a smile. I told her not to worry about it and to just enjoy the day. The next day, however, I told my daughter I would be filing for divorce, and my daughter seemed shocked. She said how I could do this to her mom before graduation, and that's why her mom couldn't enjoy the graduation. I told her it's none of her business, but we'll both always love her regardless. My wife and I are now going through divorce proceedings. Ada, Update 1. After telling my daughter about the divorce, things spiraled pretty quickly. I expected some blowback, but what I didn't anticipate was just how deeply my decision would impact my daughter and how quickly it would unravel any sense of normalcy we had left. After I informed her, she didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. I figured she needed some time to process everything, but I was way off. That evening, she locked herself in her room and didn't come out for dinner. She barely even acknowledged me or her mom. She wasn't angry, at least not outwardly, but she was distant in a way that made the entire house feel different, colder. The next morning, I tried to talk to her before she headed out with some friends. I thought maybe we could have a father-daughter breakfast or just sit down and clear the air, but she barely looked at me. When I asked her how she was feeling about everything, she just shrugged and said, "I don't understand how you can just leave Mom like this after everything." I tried to explain to her that this wasn't an overnight decision and that I'd been struggling with it for a long time, but the more I talked, the more it felt like I was digging myself into a hole. She wasn't hearing any of it. She repeated that I was selfish for doing this right after her graduation and that Mom didn't deserve it. Now I get it. It's tough for a kid to understand the complexities of a marriage, especially when they've only seen things from the outside. From her perspective, we were a united family for the past few years, and now it must look like I'm just throwing that all away for no reason. What she doesn't know, what I haven't told her, is just how much that affair shattered me. I'm not sure if I even want to explain it to her. There's this part of me that feels like dragging her into the mess of it would be wrong. I don't want her to lose respect for her mom or have her childhood memories tainted by the truth. But at the same time, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep tiptoeing around the details. It feels like I'm the villain of this story in her eyes, and my wife, who cheated on me, is somehow the victim. After my daughter left that day, my wife and I had a long conversation. Well, I guess it was more of an argument. She's still in disbelief over the divorce, and she keeps asking me to reconsider. She says I'm throwing away everything we've rebuilt, and that we could work on things, go back to counseling, whatever it takes. I told her that we've already done the counseling, and frankly, it's not about what we can rebuild anymore. It's about what I can live with, and I can't live with the betrayal hanging over me like a cloud any longer. It's not that I don't believe she's remorseful, it's just that no matter how much we've tried to move past it, I've never really been able to. I thought I could, but it's always there, lurking in the background. What hit me the hardest in this conversation was when she said, "I thought we were happy again. Weren't you happy?" And the truth is, I was. I wasn't pretending when we had those romantic vacations or the date nights. I did love her, and there were moments when I felt like we'd truly gotten through the worst of it. But the issue isn't whether or not we were happy. It's that the happiness was always temporary. It was like building a house on a cracked foundation. No matter how good it looks on the outside, you always know something is wrong underneath, and eventually, those cracks are going to show. After the argument, I left the house for a bit. I needed space, needed to think. I ended up going for a long drive, and somewhere along the way, I found myself parked at the beach. I sat there for hours, just thinking. About the past 6 years, about my daughter, about my marriage. There was this moment where I thought maybe I was making a mistake, that maybe I was overreacting. But every time I considered going back, I remembered what my sister said to me. That line about spending the rest of my life with someone who had betrayed me. It hit hard because, deep down, I know she's right. I could keep going through the motions, keep pretending, but eventually that betrayal would creep back in, and I'd be right back where I am now. It's like living with a time bomb, knowing that no matter how peaceful things seem, it could all blow up again. When I got back home, my daughter was there, but she still wasn't speaking to me. My wife was crying in the kitchen, and I could tell she'd been on the phone with someone, probably her sister or a friend, maybe even her therapist. I didn't ask. I just went upstairs to my office and tried to bury myself in work, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about my daughter and how I was losing her too. It's not just the divorce that's painful. It's the idea that this decision is going to change my relationship with her forever. And I hate that. I hate that she sees me as the bad guy, and I don't know how to fix that. I haven't told anyone else in the family yet, though I'm sure word is spreading. My wife's side of the family is tight-knit, and they've always been close with us. Her sister has been calling a lot more lately, asking how we're doing, how the graduation was, but I haven't picked up the phone. I'm not ready to deal with the fallout from them. My own family, on the other hand, is smaller, and besides my sister, who knows everything, I haven't told anyone else. I'm dreading that conversation with my parents because they adore my wife, and this is going to blindside them. As for my wife, she's been distant too, though in a different way. We still sleep in the same bed, which is awkward as hell, and the tension between us is unbearable. I'm not sure how much longer this arrangement can last, but I'm not ready to move out just yet. I guess part of me is hoping that if I stay, maybe things won't be as bad for our daughter. Maybe she'll see that I'm still here for her, even if I'm not staying for her mom. But the reality is, things are never going to be the same. I've made my decision, and I know it's the right one for me. I just don't know if it's the right one for everyone else. Anyway, that's where things are at right now. I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but it's clear this is far from over. I just hope that, in time, my daughter can understand why I'm doing this, even if she can't see it right now. Update 2. Things have escalated since my last post, and not in a good way. After a couple of tense, silent days in the house, I decided I needed to have a more direct conversation with my daughter. It wasn't fair to leave things hanging in the air like that, so I sat her down after dinner. I told her that I understood she was upset, but that I needed her to hear my side of things. I tried to explain how long I had been struggling with this decision, how hard it was to finally come to terms with what had happened between me and her mom. I even hinted at some of the pain I've been carrying around for the past 6 years, though I still couldn't bring myself to lay out the entire truth about the affair. She listened, but I could tell she wasn't really absorbing what I was saying. When I was done, she asked me flat out, "Did you ever even love Mom again? Or were you just pretending all this time?" That question hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't prepared for it. I told her that I did love her mom, that I wasn't pretending, but that the betrayal had changed things in a way that I couldn't completely move past. I thought maybe that would help her understand where I was coming from, but instead, it seemed to make her angrier. She told me it was selfish of me to stay if I knew I couldn't get over it, and that by doing so, I'd wasted years of all of our lives. That stung. She wasn't wrong in a sense. There's definitely a part of me that feels guilty for dragging this out, for not leaving when the affair first came to light. But at the same time, I genuinely thought we could fix things. I didn't stay out of some sense of obligation or martyrdom. I stayed because I wanted to believe we could rebuild. For a long time, it felt like we had. That's what I'm trying to get her to see. But all she can focus on now is that I'm the one breaking everything apart, and it's hard for her to reconcile that with the man she's always seen as steady and reliable. After that conversation, things with my daughter took a turn. She's been spending more and more time out of the house, staying at friends' places and coming back late at night. I asked her where she's been going, and she just shrugged and said, "What does it matter? It's not like I need to be around for this circus." That was tough to hear. I get that she's hurt, but I didn't expect her to start pulling away so dramatically. I guess I thought we had a stronger bond than that, but maybe I've underestimated how much this is affecting her. Meanwhile, my wife has been in full damage control mode. She's been alternating between trying to fix things with me and trying to play the victim in front of our daughter. I overheard her telling our daughter one night that she's fighting for our family and that I'm the one who's given up. That pissed me off. She's conveniently leaving out the part where she was the one who betrayed me in the first place. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to get into another argument in front of our daughter, especially when she's already so on edge. But my patience finally ran out last night. I came home late from work, exhausted and just wanting some peace, and found my wife sitting at the kitchen table with my daughter, talking in hushed tones. The moment I walked in, they both stopped talking, and my daughter gave me this look that I can only describe as cold. I asked what was going on, and my wife, with this calm, almost patronizing tone, said they were just discussing the future and how to handle things once the divorce was final. I couldn't believe it. I told her that if she was going to have those kinds of conversations, I needed to be included. My wife rolled her eyes and said, "What's there to include you in? You've already made your decision." And then my daughter chimed in, saying, "Yeah, Dad, it's not like you care what happens next, right?" That's when I lost it. I snapped at both of them, telling my wife to stop playing the victim, and that it was her actions that led us here, not mine. I also told my daughter that while I understood she was upset, she needed to realize that this was an adult situation, and I wasn't going to let her guilt me into staying in a marriage that was broken beyond repair. I hate that I raised my voice at her, but I've been bottling up so much anger and frustration that it just all came pouring out. After that, my daughter stormed off to her room, and my wife sat there staring at me like I was the monster she's been painting me as. I told her we needed to figure out the logistics of the separation, like who's moving out and when, because living under the same roof is becoming unbearable. She didn't respond. She just sat there, looking like she was going to cry again, which has been her go-to reaction for weeks now. I honestly don't know how we're supposed to cohabitate for much longer, but we don't have any solid plans in place yet. The thought of leaving my daughter with her right now feels wrong, especially since she's already poisoning her mind against me, but I can't stay here either. Things reached a breaking point this morning. My daughter was supposed to go to an orientation event for her college, but instead, she called me from a friend's house saying she wasn't going. She said she couldn't focus on stupid college stuff right now, and that she's more concerned with what's happening at home. I tried to tell her that she needed to focus on her future, that college is still important, but she cut me off saying, "How can I care about my future when everything I know is falling apart?" That was the moment I realized just how much damage this divorce is doing to her, more than I initially thought. She's always been strong and independent, but this has shaken her in a way I didn't expect. I feel like I'm losing her, not just because of the divorce, but because of the way my wife has been manipulating the situation. My daughter and I were always close, and now every interaction feels like a battleground where I'm constantly being judged for my decision to end the marriage. I'm honestly at a loss right now. I know the divorce is the right choice for me, but seeing the way it's impacting my daughter is making me question everything. I can't stay in a marriage out of guilt or to maintain some illusion of a perfect family. But I also can't ignore the fact that my daughter is clearly falling apart because of this. My wife, meanwhile, continues to act like she's the martyr in all of this, and it's infuriating. She still hasn't acknowledged the full weight of what she did, and she's using our daughter as a shield to deflect any responsibility. I'm starting to wonder if I should just move out sooner rather than later. Maybe some space would help cool things down, give my daughter time to process without me being around as a constant reminder of the divorce. But at the same time, I don't want to abandon her and leave her completely under my wife's influence. It feels like a lose-lose situation no matter what I do. At this point, I'm just taking things one day at a time. I don't know what the next few weeks are going to look like, but something's got to give soon. I can't keep living in this limbo, and I don't want to keep dragging my daughter through this emotional tug-of-war.